If you went into Whole Foods and saw that some piece of meat you wanted to buy was blessed by Mother Earth, would you still eat it? That's what we're going to talk about today in 1 Corinthians 8. Boy, there you go. There's some relevance for you. Hi, this is Jill from the Northwoods talking about Bible topics and Bible chapters, one small step at a time. This chapter is going to continue this conversation, like I said the last time, that Paul looks like he has received letters and also gotten word outside of these letters of what's going on in this church of Corinth. There's been many different topics he has talked about, but it always seems to me like it comes out with love, following the cross, and living in humility. We could fix all of them, but last time we talked about marriage and whether you should stick with an unbelieving spouse or whether you should even get married at all. We saw touches of this when we were hearing from Peter in Acts, where he saw that image that said, "Don't take anything that I have made and make it unclean. Call it unclean. There's no food that is unclean." And this is going to come up and tie up this group. This is a place, like I said, that was not terribly far from Athens. There is going to be food that is dedicated to the gods. And in this particular case, meat that was dedicated to God, it would go to be sacrificed at the temple. And then the priests at the temple, like they had the temple of Aphrodite, they would use then the portion of the meat. And the best part of the meat would go to the market and the stores. And then they would mark it as, well, this was part of the dedication to Aphrodite. And should they even partake in it? Should they talk about this? And we've heard Paul talk about this before. They were having meat that was sacrificed to God, other gods, and should they even eat it? And the message we got the last time is the message we're going to get this time too, that we all possess knowledge, and knowledge means that we know those gods aren't real. They're pieces of silver. They're pieces of wood. They're fabrications that were mentioned in various writings. I kind of wonder if many of them weren't even demons or fallen angels, that kind of thing. I don't know. But they're not real. And there's no reason you shouldn't eat the meat because they're dedicated to something that doesn't exist. So who cares? And that's the idea about it. We're not sacrificing to anything. There is no sacrifice to a God that just doesn't exist. So this part is a knowledge that we should understand and have. But here's the important part. This knowledge shouldn't be puffed up. It shouldn't make us feel puffed up. And I think we get that a lot of times when we think about, when we know something and we have a brother and sister who, I just don't know. I just don't know if we should do this or that. Or, it's like, well, it's pretty clear, it says right here in Paul that we should not worry about whatever it is. And when we get something that we feel very knowledgeable about, it tends to make us prideful. It tends to make us think that we're better than. So imagine, I have someone comes to me and says, "Oh, Jill, I don't know if we should even get married anymore. I mean, Paul wasn't married. We should really just follow his example." And I would say, oh, well, as a matter of fact, it says in 1 Corinthians, it doesn't matter whether you get married or not married. You live your life dedicated to Christ either way. And if you can stand not being married, then maybe it's probably better that you don't. But if it causes you to temptation, maybe you should. Now look at me. I'm very smart, and there's my poor, weaker brother, sister in Christ who just didn't understand what I understand. Now it's pridefulness. Now it's arrogance. And so that's where he's saying that, you might know this, and there's people among you who know this. That's where I get the idea, is that someone wrote this letter to Paul, maybe tattling on the brothers and sisters in the church who didn't believe they should eat this meat and saying, I know better. I know that we should eat this meat. We've been through this all before, and holding it over the heads of the people in his church. And we're not supposed to do that either. We're not supposed to be arrogant. And even if we understand the correct thing, that there are no other gods and it's fine for you to eat the meat, let people come along slowly. They might not realize it, show them the passages, that kind of thing. But you don't have to be a jerk and an arrogant jerk at that about this. So that's the idea. And I've seen it here, too. I live in a place that has a farmer's market and it's pretty earthy, crunchy. And there was something that was dedicated to Gaia for bringing this food. And I thought, ugh, Should I be eating it? But of course we don't care. That's the idea, because that Gaia doesn't exist. And so we couldn't hold that over someone's head if they do eat it, and we don't hold it over their heads if they decide not to do it. We're not going to have pride about it either way. We should love God and we should love each other. And we know, and God knows, that we're eating food that is sacrificed to nothing. So it doesn't matter. And Jesus knows that Jesus is the only Lord. And that's the thing that matters. But then again, don't be jerks about it and don't be arrogant about it. And these are people who are living in the areas of paganism with the Greek and Roman faith and idols to everything and everyone, and a temple of Aphrodite right there. And now that you're a Christian, you see the other side of this beef situation and realize it wasn't sacrificed to anyone. Go ahead and feel fine. But if you do feel squeamish about it and you feel like you shouldn't do it, then don't do it. It's totally fine too. Don't think that the food is defiled, but don't feel bad if someone else in your church thinks that they don't want to eat the church. It's all good. Everything is given to us by God. And we're no worse for eating it, and we're better off probably for eating it, because it'd be healthy for us, because God made this food that is good for us. So anyway, that's the whole idea about it. But you get the idea where there's this balance, first of all, between eating and not eating it. Go ahead and pick. But then there's also that idea of having knowledge or not having knowledge of it, and don't be a jerk about it. Either way, don't let something become a stumbling block to other people. If that other person's conscience is weak, is saying that, don't discourage them. Get over yourself. Don't put that person down. Don't destroy your brother, because that's also sinning against your brother. You're damaging that other person who's probably wrong about the meat, because the meat's fine, but don't put them down. You're putting them in a bad spot. You're making them feel terrible. This is not loving at all. And clearly, there are things that God asked us to do and some things that God asked us not to do. And that's where we stick those items. But if people have other things that is important to them, feels special to them, again, don't worry about it. I grew up Jewish, and so it could be that I would have felt closely tied to keeping kosher or having Sabbath, and I didn't, but I could have. And if I felt that strongly about it, go with it. I remember once after church, we all went to a bar, including the pastor, and then suddenly he got very quiet, and then he said, I know your father was an alcoholic. Are you okay with this? We can all just go and do something else. I'm sorry, that if this is offensive to you. There's no thing about going to a pub after church. We're not supposed to get drunk, but there's nothing against drinking casually, right? But he was worried that because of my background, I would be offended about what they were doing. So, it's the idea of kindness and humility. And I appreciated what he did, but just because something is legal doesn't necessarily, like I said, make sure that it's good for you, and doesn't, even if the things don't have a specific thing against it, let people be. Let people be, and don't be jerks about it. There's a statement. So anyway, we bring up the idea that we know that things can be stumbling blocks to people. That may not be stumbling blocks to us. It could be an R-rated movie. It could be alcohol. It could be eating meat. I knew someone, like I said, who did a lot of the Jewish culture things and wore head coverings. She wants to wear a head covering. Let her wear a head covering. I'm not going to say that she shouldn't, and neither did she ever come to me and say, hey, Jill, why are you not doing that? We just let each other be. So that's the idea. We're free inside of Christ to do these things or not do these things, and we just shouldn't be fighting with people. So in the end, it's not about eating meat, not eating meat. It's about being loving. That's the most important value here, is that we should be loving for each other. What I'm going to meditate on with this passage is that tension between spirituality, right and wrongs, and being loving, right and wrong. And 1 Corinthians 8 really challenges us, Paul challenges us, to know the truth, but apply it in a way that builds other people up and not tears them down. The question isn't whether you have the liberty in Christ to do something. It's whether or not you're willing to lay that liberty down for the sake of someone else's faith, or to show them the passages and then let them be. Are the people in your life having a struggle? Are what they doing, is it perfectly acceptable? Are there practices, something that you have confidence in, but that other person maybe doesn't? Or vice versa, you don't feel comfortable with something and that other person does. And so I'm going to take a lot of time meditating on how I can practice restraint, not because I have to do so because of the law, but I do so because I want to be loving to other people. I want the Spirit to show through in me that where I have freedoms to do something can also be opportunities for compassion to other people, and how I can ask God to help me become more aware, to maybe be quiet when I feel like I should pipe up, or to be helpful when someone needs to hear a message. Maybe they're growing or healing or learning something, and let them go through that path. Christ did not cling to his rights. He emptied himself for our sake, and we can do that for others as well. And what I'm going to pray about is the idea that the human heart clings to being right. We love to take pride in being right. We love to know how right we are. And we love to elevate our knowledge so that we can tell people how right we are. We need to ask for forgiveness, that our freedoms within Christianity are there to elevate ourselves closer to God, to help minimize the struggles of other people and not bring them down and not be a stumbling block to them. And so we thank God that his truth is that he sets us free, but that he reminds us that that truth without love becomes a burden and not a blessing to other people. And so we should help look out for our brothers and sisters in compassion rather than critique, rather be gentle instead of judgmental when it is something that is a judgment call, when it's not something that is one way or the other, that our salvation depends on it. But we should soften our hearts and our minds to other people, their backgrounds, their battles, their own boundaries, and to give us humility to understand that we shouldn't boast in our understanding, in our knowledge, but remind us that God alone is the source of all wisdom and knowledge. And so our knowledge should be wrapped in mercy, and let our liberties always be ruled by love. We want to be more like Christ, and not just about what we believe. And that's how we treat each other. And what I'm going to share with other people is this idea that Christian life is, the freedom isn't primarily meant to be something we bludgeon each other with. It's a gift. It's meant to serve each other in a world where self-expression is treated as the highest virtue, and the gospel calls us to something more beautiful, self-restraint for the sake of love. The mature Christian doesn't demand their rights at all cost against other people inside of the church. They look to see whether their actions will harm or hurt other people instead of building them up. And just because the law is beneficial, it doesn't mean that we need to exercise our freedoms at every minute, whether it's food, drink, entertainment, or other options. Out of love, we should look out for our fellow believers. We model Jesus, who gave us everything we need to draw near. And to share that thought with someone else, that Christian freedom isn't about doing what I want. It's about doing, in the end, what is loving to someone else and what I can do to strengthen them. I think in that case, Paul had Timothy circumcised and then turns around right away and says that circumcision is not required. Why did he do that? He knew that Timothy's not being circumcised would be a stumbling block to people. And so it was done out of love. And I can see that Timothy wanted to love that community and be more available to them, even though he didn't have to do that. Anyway, thanks so much. I appreciate you watching or listening. Please leave a comment if we're on a video channel. If you have something to say to me, you can email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. I'd love to hear from you. And I hope that you're enjoying and reading along in the Bible one small step at a time.